Finally, we've had some good news to report out of the Israel-Hamas war. Over the weekend, the IDF rescued 4 Israeli hostages being held by Hamas terrorists in Gaza. Here is one of the hostages, 25-year-old Noah Aragami, being reunited with her father. Let's cross to the UK. We're joined by Josh Rom. Josh, we usually talk about the royal family, and we will in a moment, but this development is just too important and something that we've spent a fair bit of time talking about off air, because what we've both noticed is the double standard when it comes to the coverage of this great news that hostages were being rescued. What's your take?
I mean, it's absolutely what you say. It's a double standard. 1 minute we're hearing from pro-Palestinian activists going, it's a genocidal war. Israel's supposed to have the best military in the world. Why don't they just go and rescue the hostages? They clearly know where they are. And then the next minute we're hearing, well, at what cost? Because 200 civilians, according to the Hamas figures, let's just emphasize that, the Hamas-led health ministry in Gaza. So we don't quite know if those figures are reliable or not. There is a very strong chance that those figures may be inflated. We also know that various news agencies have actually done deep dives into the figures, and some have said that they don't make sense. The UN also recently also reported that the figures, I believe, are inflated as well. So we're hearing all the time of, you know, oh, it's amazing that the hostages are released. We heard this from, of course, Guy Pearce, famous for his part on Neighbours, the Australian soap. However, he doesn't seem to really, know that much about a two-state solution and coexistence, because we're hearing the lines, it's great that the hostages are released, but ... And let's just remember here, because where were these hostages found? These hostages were found and rescued by the IDF, by the Shin Bet, and by the Yamima forces in the Nusrat refugee camp. So one, why are these hostages being held in refugee camps? That's number one. Bearing in mind also, these so-called refugee camps aren't exactly tented camps, as we're seeing in the likes of Calais and other camps that are traditionally that we see in the world. These are proper towns. These are refugee camps, basically where, unfortunately, people were displaced back in 1948, and they've developed into towns and cities. They're not exactly traditional refugee camps, but I digress. One, what were the hostages doing being held in refugee camps? Two, why were they placed in these civilian areas? Why were civilians guarding these hostages? And that's also going on to another point is, by hostages being held in civilian areas, that effectively makes these civilians legitimate military targets, according to international law. So there's so much to unpick here, and also bearing in mind, people saying, oh well, 200 civilians dead. These 200 civilians would be absolutely alive today if Hamas did not commit those dreadful, barbaric attacks on October the 7th, where 1,200 people in Israel were murdered, babies were burnt, women were raped. There was systematic rape. And there is so much double standards being like, hey, well, I'm glad the hostages are home, but ... No, unfortunately, Hamas are to blame for all of this. They're the ones that took the hostages in the first place, and they're the ones exacerbating these civilian deaths by putting these civilians deliberately in harm's way. You know, Yahya Sinwar, the leader, one of the leaders of Hamas, was recently quoted. The Wall Street Journal, I believe, did a deep dive into some of his own comments, where he says the more people that die, it helps us, because it will go as far. They want Israel to be delegitimized on the world stage, and they know by putting civilians in harm's way, by using them as human shields, that will only go to help their own cause, their own terrorist, barbaric cause. They do not care. about innocent Palestinian life in Gaza. They do not. They actually want as many people to die as possible. Every single ounce of blood that has been shed, what has been the root cause of that? Hamas.
It's such an important point, and we all live in echo chambers to some extent. Do you feel that social media is making anti-Semitism worse in parts of the world when we're seeing people share images, AI images, for example, the all eyes on Rafah, without actually doing their homework, without doing the digging, and without really factoring in that Hamas launched this attack on October 7? What are your thoughts on that, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I've covered this at length, actually. I recently appeared on the UK station Talk, where I spoke at length about this, because there is this intense double standard when it comes to the all eyes on Rafah. Because where were all of these people? Where were they sharing these graphics when it came to October the 7th? I mean, you know, I've been hearing very disturbing reports just this week about how forget Jewish students here, even non-Jewish students who have tried to show solidarity with Israel on UK campuses have been facing, especially my alma mater of Nottingham, have been facing harassment, intimidation on a scale completely unimaginable before this. You know, before October the 7th, I will, for the interest of this program, I will say, listen, I am Jewish. I have a vested interest in this. I've got family who live in Israel. But before October the 7th, I always thought, I never understood how the Holocaust could physically happen, how people could just sit around whilst the Jewish race was being persecuted in their millions. After October the 7th, seeing not just the inactivity of people, but the hypocrisy, the double standards, and the way people have been brainwashed by Hamas propaganda, I now, unfortunately, fully understand that concept. And that, to me, is terrifying. And this is the thing, Gabriella, the fact is, I should not be discussing this on your program. I should be here discussing the royals, the Princess of Wales, the recovery, the trooping of the colour, which I know we'll go on to do. But this is the thing, I shouldn't be on here discussing this. You know, the fact that I'm on here reporting on this is so saddening to me. And I don't want to make this about me. I'm not a victim. And, you know, I've been called such horrible names since all of my recent appearances. I've been called an anti-Gentile extremist. That was a funny one. I've been called a white settlist white colonial settlist, white colonialist settler, bearing in mind I have not ever moved from the country that I was born in, and I was born in the UK, voted UK elections, haven't moved from the UK except going on holiday. That's been not hilarious, but that's been another funny one. But I'm not the victim here. The victims were the people on October the 7th. The victims are the people in Israel living in a war zone, living under the threat of daily rocket fire. The real victims are the civilians in Gaza being put in harm's way by their terrorist genocidal regime. You know, I'm not a victim here, but I do find it incredibly such a sad state of the world that I'm having to come on your program and discuss this in the first place.
Josh, you are doing a brilliant job speaking out, and we appreciate you speaking out here on this program on Power Hour. And the fear and the hate that you are experiencing right now, I know is also being felt by Jewish communities here in Australia. So we need to keep speaking about this issue. And as you say, we shouldn't be. So let's talk about the royal family. It's what we do, bring you on regularly to talk about all the royal news, and you do it brilliantly, because coming up we have the Trooping of the Colour. It's the annual military parade for the British monarch's official birthday, a major event for the royal family, and this year's parade will be held on Saturday. Josh, what can we expect?
So we can expect the royal family out in full force. We can expect pageantry all over again. We can expect 1,400 troops. We can expect 200 horses. We can expect 400 musicians all coming together in this huge celebration to celebrate the monarch's official birthday, the sovereign's official birthday. So, of course, as well, The parade will start at Buckingham Palace. It will go down the Mall, and then it will finish at Horse Guards Parade. It will eventually end. The huge ceremony will end in this fantastic RAF royal fly past, which is going to be watched by members of the royal family from the Buckingham Palace balcony. We're seeing there on the screen previous scenes from previous Trooping the Colours. There will be, however, I think it's important to note that there will be some moderations to the service and to the ceremony, to the processions. We know that Her Royal Highness the Princess of Wales will not be in attendance as she recovers from cancer and as she receives preventative chemotherapy treatment. She's not expected to attend. We've also, there will also be a moderation to how the king will conduct himself, because usually the sovereign will inspect troops very slowly. They will inspect the 6 guard units, they will inspect the household cavalry, and then the king's troop. They will usually the king would inspect these troops on horseback. This is going to be slightly different because we're going to be seeing the king inspecting the troops instead in an Ascot Landau carriage, instead of taking part in the procession on horseback, of course, as the king undergoes his own form of cancer treatment. The moderations that are taking place have been, this is the king taking the advice of his medical team here.
Josh, there are reports that Princess Catherine has made significant progress in her recovery. We know that Vanity Fair royal expert Katie Nicholl insists that she'll return to work as soon as her medical team gives her the green light. But once again, we're seeing conspiracy theories return around her well-being, something that we don't need at this time because we need Princess Catherine to recover. Josh, what's your understanding?
I mean, my understanding is exactly that. I've heard from sources that the recovery is going well. She will, of course, return to work when she can, when given the go-ahead by her medical team. We know previously, after this huge operation, the abdominal surgery, that she was meant to return to work in Easter. Of course, the then subsequent diagnosis of cancer then put a stop to that as she receives more treatment to recover. We do know that she has sent letters. She has been at least active behind the scenes. She sent letters to some of the troops taking part in the parade this weekend, also apologizing for the fact that she couldn't be there. She also making it clear how much she wanted to be there and how much she supports them and admires the work that they're doing. You know, but these conspiracy theories, what do they want? Do they literally want footage from the Princess of Wales's bed? I mean, it's absolutely absurd. She is exactly where the palace say she is. She is at home, spending time with her children when they're not in public, and recovering from not just abdominal surgery, but receiving preventative chemotherapy treatment from cancer. The conspiracy theorists, it just seems like they won't stop, but it's also absolutely ridiculous because yes, she might not be elected, but yes, she is a public figure. But at the same time, she absolutely has a right to privacy when it comes to her medical treatment, especially as the palace Prince William is at work now. We're seeing the king out and about doing some duties. They are being relatively transparent when they come to this. Of course, keeping some details under lock and key, but that's to be expected when it comes to her private medical conditions. You know, she will return to work when she's able to. We know how dedicated she is to this country and to the Commonwealth as well. We know this. So cut her some slack as she recovers. This is not what she needs right now.
Finally, Josh, there are reports that Meghan Markle has had another fallout with a famous friend, this one being Victoria Beckham. Victoria, who attended Meghan and Prince Harry's royal wedding in 2018 with her husband David Beckham, who I love, had a long-standing friendship with Prince Harry, and it's claimed that started to change in 2020. What can you tell us?
Well, yes, I previously covered this in the UK. They have previously had a falling out, but tensions don't seem to be easing anytime soon because just last week, David Beckham was made an ambassador of the King's Foundation and went to a reception, shaking hands with the King, was pictured with His Majesty the King. And you know, we're seeing this all across Hollywood. You know, there's been also very much reports this week by my good friend Richard Fitzwilliams talking about how Meghan and Harry, they're not necessarily receiving the sort of showbiz invites that they might want to receive. You know, they're not going to the Met Gala. They're not going to the Oscars. They're seen as almost this sideshow. And actually, funny enough, we're seeing Oprah Winfrey on the screen now, that infamous interview. Well, Oprah Winfrey herself has been promoting Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop lifestyle range, but absolutely no mention whatsoever of American Riviera Orchard, bearing in mind she was one of the 50 people to receive the special jam as a gift to help promote this new lifestyle brand from Meghan. This is the thing. We're seeing more and more, I've previously said in the program, we're seeing all of the Hollywood stars cozy up to Prince William at the BAFTAs, and more we're hearing all of these reports, how all of these stars are very much distancing themselves from Harry and Meghan. And you know, we're seeing them with the other royals. We're seeing them with Prince William. We're seeing just this week David Beckham with His Majesty the King as part of this new foundation with tackling climate change. So this is the thing. Harry and Meghan, they are most definitely coming across as a sideshow. You know, these programs on Polo, it's just not going to cut it in Hollywood. It's very clear that Harry and Meghan, they're not being taken seriously in Hollywood. They're not being taken seriously at all. They're not being invited to these big showbiz events. The A-list crowd that they want to get in with, they're not taking them seriously. They're falling out with friends left, right, and centre. They're being deserted by the entertainment industry. And also, you know, it's also, they're not doing themselves any favors. Just this week, another very good friend of mine, Michael Cole, who has great sourcing, by the way, he was speaking about the pain that His Majesty the King feels not having this deep connection with Archie and Lilibet. He's only seen Archie a number of times, on a handful of occasions. He's only seen Lilibet once. Prince Harry, of course, when he's rushed back to the UK for this occasion, that occasion, to see his father after cancer treatment, has not brought Meghan Markle, has not brought his children. Prince Charles acutely feels this separation, and it's not just because of the 5,000 miles in between the UK and California. It's also because of Meghan and Harry. They're not doing that much to facilitate the relationships. You know, there's only so much closeness that you can get from a video call.
Josh Rom, really appreciate you coming on Power Hour and discussing a wide range of topics for us. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much, as always, Gabriella.